I'm just helping you get out of it, really.
Much appreciated. Welcome, everybody. This session is a follow-on that we talked about last week. Last week, what we talked about was the basics of formation management. And if you recall, when we talked about formation, we talked about just the formation. We're not talking about a phasar. A phasar is a complete, where is everybody? What's their sequence? What's their relationship? That is something that comes after you learn. So we're doing the next session. That's taking the individual movements one, two at a time, which we did with call analysis. And we're applying that to what is commonly referred to as flow sequencing or sequence modules or what have you. And I'll go into a little bit more detail on that in this session. So let me just share my screen here. If I can you see that? My screen up?
No, it's not.
Not.
Okay, what's going on here? Let's try this again. My screen
Now
up?
it is.
Okay. So as I was saying, this is a follow-up on last week's session, and it's a very, very important thing to remind everybody that what we're doing is we're going to be starting at the basics. Now, this is for new callers that are starting to learn, but it's also for experienced callers, because one of the biggest complaints we get from newer callers is, I went to a caller school and suddenly I'm talking, they were talking about an RBO, and if I change an RBO to a PL and I change a PL to a CB but then they gave this ZB or zero box, which took me to a box 1-4, and I had no idea what the guy was talking about, which of course, depending on who you're talking to, we're talking phasar sequencing, moving from one known location to another known location. What we have to do is remind ourselves and anybody that we're starting at the basics, but we're still sticking with the basics of formation management and not phasar management. Okay, in other words, last week we looked at the 14 basic foundation formations. Now there's 97 formations, but there's really 14 that you have to worry about, and you don't have to have all those at the same time. You slowly build into those 14 recognizable formations. And we reviewed those last week. We'll touch on them again today. And in managing formations, you really narrowed it down to two options. Does it keep the formation, i.e. does it keep the footprints on the floor? Or does it change the formation? Does it change the footprints on the floor? Not does a girl change positions or a boy change positions, but does it keep that couple facing a couple, same orientation? If it changes the orientation, it's a change. If it doesn't, if you still have a facing couple as a facing couple, it's a keep formation. And those are really your only two options. And when you get it down to that level, it becomes very, very simple to look at formations, especially since most of your movements are two couple movements. We then looked at what happens when you put one or two movements together, noting that sometimes combinations may keep the formation, or each individual movement may change a formation, moving from one to the next, to the next, to the next. What this was the start of understanding how sequencing works. Our focus was on understanding what you could do from what formation when it's presented in front of you, and seeing what each call did. And then once you've done that call, what you can do from the subsequent formation that you ended up in. Calling like that is a useful skill, but it also leads to very choppy calling, because you start, you call, you stop, where are they, what can I do next? That takes a long time in practicing, and it's a very good exercise, but this is the next step in that development. The other things that were determined through the basics of call analysis is what hand is needed to do the movement, which way does the body move, what hand is free at the end of the movement, how long does it take to do the movement, all those other kinds of things. So in principle, if we know what formation we're in, and we know what the call does to the formation, we know what hand is needed at the start, what hand is needed at the end, and how long it takes, we can theoretically at this point start stringing these individual movements together that fit these parameters. And what that is, that's called a movement sequence. And what we're going to be looking at is flow sequencing to meet all of those parameters. So we ask, why do we want to do this? Well, the answer is really quite simple: smooth dancing. Smooth dancing is what gives a greater dancer experience. And that's what this is all about. Now, if you try and find a definition for smooth dancing or smooth square dancing, you will not be able to find one. It does not exist. There's a lot of opinions. But what I did was I looked up smooth dancing itself. And even that has divided opinions. But this was the best that I could come up with. Okay. Smooth dancing is the elegance, grace, and fluidity of movement where dancers rotate in both a clockwise and counterclockwise direction, moving in a defined area of a dance floor without unintentional jerks of movements or conflict of body flow unless intended as part of the dance movement. And to me, that was an absolutely perfect definition. And the key things are unintentional jerks of movement, which means sometimes there are sudden changes of direction, but it's intended. Sometimes there are conflicts of body flow, but it's intended. And if it's not intended, it's a smooth flowing motion, both counterclockwise and clockwise, that uses an area of a dance floor. Now, if you think of square dancing, because this is not about square dancing, that pretty much defines what square dancing is. Okay, square dancing is often compared to the movements of contemporary ballroom dancing, but there's two standards there even when we talk about smooth dancing. You've got you've got the international standard, and then you've got the American smooth ballroom, which is actually a classified dancing style, American smooth ballroom. And it's that latter one that is most closely emulated by square dancing. International standards have very stringent requirements on position, staying close, in form, in frame, and all that. Whereas American smooth ballroom has both men and women moving freely without specific limits. That way they can enjoy better autonomy from themselves in smooth dancing. They can dance their own moves, maintain their independence, but also maintain their partner coordination and body contact when required. That's the way they define smooth ballroom dancing. Does that sound a lot like square dancing? It also goes on to say timing is the key to that form. Does that sound like something we want to achieve in square dancing? In my opinion, yes. So in square dancing, dancers have their own part of the movement to do. Each dancer moves independently in their own component of the movement usually. Partner coordination is matched with the actions of other dancers in the square. Body contact and hand contact is part of the movement as required, and good timing is essential to smoothness. Now, if that doesn't adequately describe what we want to achieve with square dancing, I don't know what does. And what it means is that if everybody does their individual part and they work together they will achieve smooth, comfortable, well-timed, and flowing dance. And that's what our job as a caller is to provide, is the material for them to be able to do that. Your job is to deliver smooth. Okay. And if we understand what the essence of smooth dancing, and that's moving around the floor with nice transition that's comfortable and moving to the music in multiple directions that's well timed. If we know our basic formations, if we know what a movement does to those formations, if we know how long it takes to do a movement, if we know which way the body moves, and we know what hand is free at the end of the movement, and if we know a few options that we can do at the end of each movement, we should be able to start putting sequences of 2, 3, 4 movements together that meet all the parameters of smooth dancing. We treat and learn our call analysis individually. So what we need to do is we need to do the same thing for sequence. And you know what that is? That becomes the essence of sight calling versus sight resolution, i.e. we're moving the dancers smoothly. Smooth and flowing choreography is the basis of retaining happy and comfortable dancers that want to come back and dance to you. And this is where we actually get into the start of sight calling, because we're looking at the dancers and moving around the floor. We're not doing sight resolution, we're doing sight calling. Okay, so last week we looked at our formations, and I'm just going to go through these quickly. Okay, we've got a standard couple. That's our basic unit formation, boy on the left, girl on the right, and that's really as far as arrangement goes. It's going to change periodically through the movements, but generally when we're doing formations, we want to get back to that boy on the left, girl on the right. We've got facing couples. Those two right there are your most important formations. And the reason being, we all know that facing couples, that's over 80% of your square dance movements at basic and mainstream and plus. Can all be done with two couples. Then you've got the normal square in a circle. Alamo ring facing lines, out-facing lines, and two-face lines. Ocean waves, 8-chain through box, standard formation, a double pass-through, a completed double pass-through, a trade by, and a column. Okay, because we know a few movements that we can do from each of these formations, we can start putting combinations of smooth flowing choreography together that takes us from one to the next. And once again, we're not worried about phasar. We're only worried about the F, the formation. Okay, and what we're looking at is a smooth transition from formation to formation. When we can achieve the goal of 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 movement sequences that take us from one formation to another, we quickly find that there's a number of repeated sequences that give us a comfortable flow with a smooth change of direction and a formation. Normally what happens is, excuse me, I got something in my throat. I ate a piece of chicken. Normally what happens is that callers gravitate to remember these combination sequence, and then they use those particular things more frequently in a myriad of different situations. So what happens generally is they find a sequence that works from a line, and they'll use that more and more frequently. What happens when that occurs is those little sequences become what's known as flow sequences or flow modules. And please, you got to remember what a module is. A module is a movement or a series of movements that takes us from one known location to another known location. And in this case, we're only worried about formation. So it takes us from one known formation to another. And it's called with a purpose of achieving a specific choreographic function, changing from a line to a box or something like that. Okay. A module can be a single movement called for a purpose, or it can be a combination. Now, for me, I like to separate that just for the ease of defining. I like to classify modules as sequences that take me from a known phasar to another known phasar, and I classify others as either movements or flow sequences. That just keeps them separate in my head. How you want to separate it is good for you. But for me, that's an easier classification. Just remember, any movement or series of movements that is called to achieve a repeatable outcome and is done for a purpose of that outcome can be classified as a module. So how you want to define it is up to you. And that's a technical discussion that we can have another time. It's not really worth that much time spending on it. Modules themselves are a whole separate discussion. We've had a lot of things on that. In my opinion, the ability to put flow sequences together and move in and out of those 13 formations and work as a standard couple, formation 14, is much more important than, it's probably one of the most important things in a new caller's development, because this sets them all well on the way to successfully achieving the next steps in caller progression. And this, to me, is the real start of caller development. So for new callers, you want to get them to be able to put these little sequences together and move from one sequence to the next sequence smoothly. Don't worry about phasar. Get them moving the dancers in and out and up and down and around that grid so that the dancers can flow. Once they got that, then they can really start getting into the rest of caller development. And what they'll find is the rest of caller development, such as phasar, such as modules and everything else, are going to become much easier because they understand the basic principles of formation management. Like the last session on formation management, it's important to start this process without worrying about identifying who's with whom. And the focus of understanding is on knowing what you can do from one formation to move to a different formation in a continued short series of movements to get the desired result. In other words, a flow module or a flow sequence. So the question is, how does all this work? You as a caller should know what a movement does, and you should also know that not all movements work from all formations. Well, we do this through our call analysis. What it is, it's time to expand the individual movements into sequence flows or combinations of movements. And this requires a type of combined technical analysis memory of the calls that you use as an understanding of how they work together mechanically. So basically, we've done our call analysis on individual movements. What we do is we take those individual movements, we put a sequence together, and we do a call analysis on the sequence, treating the sequence as a movement. So if it starts in a box and ends with a line, you may have 3 movements or 4 movements or 2 movements or 7 movements, whatever you have in that sequence that works, and you treat it as one sequence flow. When you do this, what happens is you end up with a shorter block of things to remember, box to line. You may have a series of movements in there that flow and time well. And if you treat it at one movement, you're treating the whole sequence as a single call. Your analysis becomes much easier. And this is where the essence of flow sequence modules begins. Once you find some that work and you know where to use them, where to take them, and where they're going to take you to, you're going to be one of those callers that seems to be able to put together this endless string of smooth flowing actions to have the dancers moving around the dance floor with a controlled purpose, and you will meet those definitions of smooth dancing. If you haven't looked at it yet, one of the things I would strongly recommend is you watch the session that we did on call analysis. Guido Haas presented that, where he talked about the domino process. Now that's a matter of having individual calls and saying where it starts, where it finishes, what can I do from there? And you can put these things like a series of dominoes, and you put one domino after another. Initially, it was intended to answer the question, what do I do if I have limited choreography? But it also applies to this kind of thing. If you take individual movements, you can see what works with what, and you can put 3 or 4 together. And once you do that, you're going to quickly see how to apply that process to developing these skills of sequencing for yourself. And the beauty of it is we are still not worried about who is dancing with whom. We don't care about the A, the S, or the R, other than boy on the left, girl on the right with standard couples or getting there. Okay, that's the start of process focused on flow. Oops. So how to get there from here? The process of learning is exactly the same as doing the individual movements. Okay, the secret to formation flow sequences remains and will remain analysis. You've got to start with your basic call analysis. Now for new callers, exactly the same as doing it with individual calls, the same 3 things apply. Do it. Get up and walk yourself through the movement sequences using your hands when you're that way you can understand what's happening, which way your body's going, and you quickly get a feel for what sequences feel right. You've got to practice with yourself. Make a practice of targeting flowing movements and sequences that take you from one formation to the next formation and seeing where it goes. Sorry, I just had to make a couple edits, had a couple typos here. And 3, remember, it's okay to make mistakes. The only way you're going to get better is making those mistakes. Think of what works, and it works with your checkers and it works on terminations, anything, but when you get up on the dance floor, it feels like crap or you're going around in circles. You know you made a mistake. That's okay. The essence is learning from those mistakes. And you do that by doing your call analysis. And you're not only going to learn, but you're going to feel what seems right, what feels wrong, and you're going to understand why. You will make mistakes when you start, but the beauty is you get better and better and better at it, much more quickly and much more solidly than if you were just learning a bunch of fixed point modules. Okay, so once again, remember at this point, we're only talking about formation and flow sequences. We're not worried about arrangement, sequence, or relationship other than maintain that boy on left, girl on right. Okay, at this point for new callers, it's important to understand what a movement does to a formation, how it feels, and we expand that to what a sequence does to a formation and how it feels. So trust me on this. When you understand that basic concept, you're going to find when it comes time to doing the arrangement sequence relationship thing for choreographic management leading to resolution, it's going to be so much easier for you to do it. Okay, so remember, there's still only 14 formations that are necessary to learn, and you don't have to learn all of those at once. You've also got to remember that 80% of your movements can be done as 2 couples. And if you take that 2 couple work of movements and expand it to the 8 dancer analogy, if you've got a 2 couple change, you've got a 4 couple formation change. It's that simple. You've got to learn to use these skills to your advantage. So I start by developing 2 couple sequences that are short and easy to remember, have good timing, good flow, they flow smoothly, and then I expand it. There are important signature structures in square dancing that even though not predictable, when you use them over and over again, the dancers come to associate that sequence with the memory of you. One that comes to mind right off the top of my head is Dixie style to an ocean wave, swing through, chain down the line. Every time I hear that sequence, I think of Tony Oxendine, because that's his little flow sequence that he come up. Every time I hear it. When you start getting these things, you find that you'll develop a sequence that flows really well. You repeat it. Dancers come to associate that sequence with you. And that's a good thing to happen, because they get a smooth flow of a combination of movements. Hey, Daryl Clendenin did that. Bob Elling did that. Oh, that's Bob. I haven't danced with him. I better get something, go and dance with Bob. It's you. That's your market branding. It's your signature. Again, this is not Fazar management, nor is it site resolution. It's a skill of site calling by developing of flow sequence modules that give the dancers a better experience. And that's what we're all about here. We're talking about the difference between formation management and choreographic Fazar management leading to resolution, which unfortunately, too many callers still seem to think that formation management and Fazar management are the same thing. It is not about changing a corner box to a partner line or a static square to an RBO. That's choreographic management. It has one purpose, and that's controlling the dancer's movements to resolve a square or put him into a position to use a fixed point module or a site resolution technique. That's not what we're dealing with here. Choreographic management deals with Fazar and resolution, and it's a technique that comes later in development. Moving the dancers around smoothly and comfortable is much more important to learn first. Okay, this is about managing the formation, which is simply understanding where am I, understanding the mechanics of body flow from the last sequence I called, what formation it leaves me in, knowing a sequence of calls that, like an individual call, takes me to another formation where I can call something else. What happens next is that you really begin to see and manage formations in a larger group of 4 couples, in other words, 8 dancers, because with practice, options are just going to seem to start jumping out at you. You're also going to notice that you're able to manage the direction and flow of dancers from formation to formation in 2 couples and as a whole square without worrying about anything beyond standard arrangement or getting them back to a standard arrangement. Okay, you're going to be changing directions, you're going to be changing structures, you're going to be moving them all around the floor. And beyond the boy on the left, girl on the right thing, we really don't care about arrangement, sequence, relationship, only moving them smoothly with good, effective flow. Okay, so there's a natural progression that comes here. And this is, of course, identifying and repeating these flow sequences that we develop and incorporating them into our calling repertoire. Once we do that, once it becomes a flow sequence that we can repeat, it changes from just a general flow sequence to a flow module. Okay, and that's a big difference. It's not a Fazar, it's just a flow module. And those flow modules we can plug in at any time, anywhere when the formation allows it. And using this process, we'll be able to repeat it with confident control, but we'll also be able to expand our own choreographic use with a lot of variety that becomes available. When you understand basic formations have that you've identified or created as applicable flow sequences, you go through a repetitive process of organizing your thoughts by identifying the formation they're in, planning to call one of those many options that's available that you've already got prepared and memorized or in your repertoire from your call sequence analysis. What that does, that directs the dancers to move seamlessly from one position to another position on the floor with you in control of the formations, and they're moving from one to another, in and out, around, seemingly at total random, but that's not. You're in control. You don't really care about what they're doing because you said, I'm in a box, I want to get to a line. Great. Okay, I call swing through, girls circulate, boys trade, boys run, bend the line. I'm in lines. I can do that. That's a flow module that works. And it gives me time to think about what do I want to call next? Whereas individually, if I call swing through, okay, where are they? Okay, they're in a wave, good. Boys are in this, good. Boys run, great. They're in 2-face lines. What do I call next? Oh, okay, couples circulate, great. Oh, they're still in 2-face lines. What do I call next? I want to get them the lines, bend the line. You get that stop and go. By developing these sequences, you get a much greater flow, and you know it starts in a box, ends in a line. You get all that time to think. So your dancing becomes smoother because you get the lead time right, you get the command time right, and you allow the dancer execution time. And the beauty of it is knowing that you can change from formation to formation with single calls at any time. So if each of these puzzle pieces is a flow, a movement like star through, for instance, classic one, should be in every caller's repertoire. It changes a line to a box. It changes a box to a line. It changes a couple aspect. Great formation management tool. And if you know that, you can put all your sequences together with a single movement like star through or slide through, and you can add another flow sequence because you know what that will change to the formation. Individual movements add to these things. Knowing this, most of the time you can set yourself and your dancers up for smooth, flowing, successful dancing. And this type of management change, it's as easy as turning the page in a book. To achieve this, you want to move one step at a time. You've got to start small and build from there. Start with creating 2 couple sequences for boxes that change the aspect and formation, because we know that if it changes an aspect and formation, it changes the formation with 4 couples. And you want to create a bunch of 2 couple sequences that keep the formation so that you can work across. So if I'm working in a box, I can deal with that box. Then you want to create 4 couple sequences that interact on different axes. In other words, they change and they move around through each other. You create 4 couple sequences. We don't care about where they are, just that it flows and it moves around the floor. Then you practice using and mixing your 2 and 4 couple flow sequences. Okay, a good idea for me, I like to do this. I like to name the formations that I go through and where I end. So if I do swing through, boys run, bend the line, so I'm going from a box to a line, I'll go swing through, okay, I'm in an ocean wave, boys run or centers run, okay, I'm in a 2-face line, bend the line, I'm in lines. By doing that, when I get the sequence down, I say, right, box to line, swing through, boys run, bend the line. I can add swing through, boys run, couple circulate, bend the line. It's still box to a line, and it expands that repertoire greatly. Take the time to learn and practice and digest this, because if you remember from last time, the fastest way to slow down in your calling progress is to hamper success by rushing. We as caller teachers and mentors do this to our students, our new callers all the time. We try and give them so much to digest at once, and our focus becomes on, oh, can't you see? Oh, you can just call, I'm in this formation, I'm in a quarter tag and I can call extend, hinge, center, straight, boys run, and I'm in partner lines. A new caller is not going to see that. You might see that because you've gone through this process and you're resolving a square. For them, it's nothing but frustration, frustration, frustration. I'll never be that good. Start them slow, learn and build from it. And you know what? The ideal of any caller, teacher, or mentor is anybody that you ever teach to call becomes a better caller than you. And I know I've taught a number of callers, and I know several of them that they're far better than I am right now, or far better than I ever will be. Using short flow sequences, you're going to have greater mastery of the control of the dancers and their movements and the ability to move them comfortably with longer sequences from formation to formation. Your ability to move the dancers around the floor and interact across the grid on both axes is going to increase exponentially. And when it comes time to worrying about the sequence and the relationship leading to that resolution, you're going to have a much easier time getting the dancers to go where you want them to be under your effective control. And trust me, your dancers are going to love you for this because they're going to be moving and dancing and interacting with each other. And you as a caller are more worried about giving them a good time, dancing smoothly, flowing smoothly, and moving around the floor than you are worried about, okay, where's that corner? Okay, if I got to move this person to there to get to, okay, now where's their partner? Okay, I've got to move this person to there and stop and go, stop and go, stop and go. That's a technique that comes later. But if you can do this, later is going to happen a lot faster. You've got to get this thing down first. So that's just a smattering of some flow sequences and the idea behind them. I've got a few here that we can look at with time, but knowing these allows you to move and interact the dancers with control. And because you've already looked at formation management and individual calls, all you're doing is putting the sequence and treating that sequence as an individual call. And you can set up sequence to sequence to sequence to sequence. So stop share. Now that's a lot quickly, but as I said, if you remember last session, we talked about movement call analysis and sequence manage, or sorry, formation management with an individual move. We're just expanding this idea to include a full sequence. So let's open the floor for comment questions. I've got a couple of sequences I'd like to show you, and then we'll, for our new callers, we'll just start practicing this kind of stuff. Does anybody have any comments or questions? Alan, yes. You're muted, Alan.
Sorry, Bill. I hate to be the one that's always chiming in. I think you excluded arrangement, and I think that's a mistake. I think formation and arrangement calling is what you're really talking about, because you can't call a star through if you've got two ladies facing. So you really do
absolutely
need to worry about formation and arrangement, but that's the limit. You don't go beyond that.
Yeah. And I did say that in the last session and in this session, formation and arrangement beyond the establishment of a standard boy on the left, girl on the right, or getting there. And you're absolutely correct. That part of arrangement is essential to smooth formation management. It is a key. So if you have two boys together, you want to do something to get a boy and a girl together. And that's why I said movements like star through are great, because if I have two boys together facing in, I will have two girls across from them facing in. This is why understanding movements like star through. But beyond that, you're absolutely correct, Alan. We don't have to worry about anything more than if we lose that boy-girl relationship with a standard couple, we get back to it quickly. And that we covered in the last session, and I only touched on it very briefly, but it's a very good point, and I should have stressed it a little further here too. Absolutely. Any other comments, questions? For the new callers, have any of you found that it becomes very daunting when formation management is thrust at you, or what's your experience when somebody introduced you to formation management? I don't know if my sound is working or everybody's just being quiet. Raymond, when you started, was this kind of stuff that well, I already know this kind of progression was introduced to you, but did you find it daunting or something when the material you got is based around known phasars, but not actually getting to those or how to move or what it does?
Yeah, no? Well, my biggest trouble was working out, like getting from one state to the next, like in formation.
Mm-hmm.
But what you've been saying, like going through today, that's kind of, yeah, what I'm working on now with Alan to try and get more flow going. Yeah.
No, that's good. One of the comments that I got from a lot of new callers is when they were introduced to flow sequencing, the focus was still on partner relationships and finding the corner. That's your ultimate goal. And yeah, eventually that is your ultimate goal. But it's like, that's like saying my ultimate goal is getting in the car and driving to New York. Well, that's great. That's my ultimate goal. However, I have to learn how to drive a car first. I have to learn how the car works. And I have to learn that because I live in Australia, I'm going to have to take some steps that are going to allow me to drive to New York with my car, such as putting it on a boat and shipping it there. You know, I have a lot of things to learn. I can't just focus on the destination, I have to learn how to do all the steps to make that destination and journey possible. And that's like square dancing. I have to learn all those steps. And if I'm focused on the end state, finding that corner, and then I'm focused on Fazar sequences, corner box, everything, I don't know how to get them from one to the next smoothly. I don't understand the process. Learning flow sequencing is a way of managing the dancers and giving yourself time to do this, because once you can do it, setting up for a resolution or recognizing where people are on the floor becomes easy. And if you need to step back from it, you've got the tools to step back and reset yourself up. You've got the tools to move dancers around and pair people up smoothly without having to stop and look at it. It is a crucial skill to begin calling, moving the dancers, and your dancers will thank you for it. Masami, what kind of experiences have you guys had over there for when you started learning to call? What was the focus for the new callers? You're muted.
What?
When you were learning to call for new callers, where was the focus? What were they trying to get you to achieve first? Moving the dancers or resolving the square?
Downstairs.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Just learning to move them around from place to place to place?
Yeah.
That's good.
Hmm.
Because that is a basic foundation skill that dancers need to know, or sorry, that callers need to know, so the dancers can feel they're dancing, not moving, stopping, and the callers sorting out a choreographic jigsaw puzzle. That's what you don't want to have. Would anybody like to share any of their experiences or their opinions on this?
I'm finding that I'm trying to learn how to move the dancers from formation to formation at the moment, and it's tough, but I'm slowly getting there.
It is tough. And I think you're probably going to find it a little tougher than most new callers, because when you started, I know your background, you were inundated with, okay, set up a corner box. Now we're going to move from a corner box to a partner line. And here's the sequence. Don't worry about what it does or what it's doing. This is what it does. And it had no sense to you because, well, what is a partner line? What is a corner box? How do I move from a box to a line? Why doesn't this work? I've called this from this line and it doesn't work. I can't do an Alaman left. This is taking that step back because you were shoved into it 3/4 of the way through the process. So I'm hoping this kind of stuff will be assistance. I'm just going to look at a couple, because we're not getting a number of questions. I'm going to look at a couple of sequences and see if that maybe.
Mel,
Quick,
Mel.
Daryl's got his hand
yeah.
up.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
Daryl. Sorry, go ahead, Daryl. You're muted.
There, I'm clicking on my picture to unmute, believe it or not. Sorry about that. Yeah, I work with new callers. So I have a little experience at this. What we're doing with some of the new callers that I'm working with now and have been doing for weeks here now is formation to formation.
Excellent.
And we've got some exercises that we've been doing. Something like, okay, from a double pass-through formation, take us to a two-face line. Then from that two-face line, back to the double pass-through formation. From that double pass-through formation, take us to right-hand ocean waves with the boys in the middle.
Mhm.
When they get there, now take us back to the double pass-through formation. So they're building little modules, formation to formation modules, if you will, that's
Yep.
going to tell them, because in order to get from here to there, they have to understand where they're going. And that's what teaches a person how to work within The
Absolutely.
traffic. They need to know, go from here to here to here to get there, and here will take me back. And if anybody could set up their own exercise drills on this. You've only got so many places that you go in a square anyway. I mean, let's face it, you got an 8 chain through formation. You need to know how to get from the other formations to there. You have a double pass through. You have your facing lines. Mel laid them out. Just set up your own thing. Well, how do I get from those facing lines to two-face lines? When I get in two-face lines, how do I get back to facing lines? It's so simple if you know how to get from the facing lines to the two-face lines, you automatically know how to get back to the facing lines. Everything is building in there as you go through those. And like I say, you can make up your own exercise. Just pick one of the formations. Say, okay, we're going to work from an 8 chain through. And we know how to get to an 8 chain through. So from 8 chain through, go to two-face lines, go to double pass through, go to columns, go to half tag, just go through the different formations one at a time. Go to there from that 8 chain through to each one of the others and back again. You
Absolutely.
learn double that way. You learn the traffics, and that's what you really need at the beginning. Now, there again, that's assuming normal couples throughout.
Yeah.
Dancers don't need to be tested with how many different ways you can do these things. Just the simple things. And when you start adding, okay, we've got two-face lines, we're going to do a couple circulate. And that puts them in a different place in the square, and show them how the grid works, east, west, north, south, and how they can start applying these different combinations there. Like Mel said, without worrying about who the corner is or sequence or anything else. You're just looking to go from formation to formation.
Absolutely, Daryl. One of the, and I want Daryl also said it as well, and just reiterates what Alan was saying. Beyond looking at establishing that standard couple, boy on the left, girl on the right, that's the dancer's comfort zone. That's also your caller's comfort zone. That's the only aspect of arrangement there or getting there that you really have to worry about. And doing these exercises, as Daryl said, you know, we know swing through, boys run, bend the line. There's a nice little flow sequence from a box to facing lines. We also can add, as he said, a couple circulate. That changes the position on the floor and moves it around. Setting those exercises up to achieve this, what you're going to find is you're going to create a bunch of flow sequences that one or two might just stick in your head as, wow, I like that. And that becomes your repeatable flow module or your signature that becomes something to use as a caller. And that is a skill that is absolutely invaluable for dancer comfort and dancer success. Daryl, you have your hand up, and then Mickey, I think you have your hand up.
Along with that, the sessions we've been running, we are taking, if we say we're going to go from right hand ocean waves to two-face line, you say swing through, boys run. Everybody gets that just like that. But we start saying, how else can you get there? Well, nice popular combination is girls trade and recycle and veer left maybe. That's from the right hand waves. And then take them back to the right hand waves. But go through a few of those nice simple ones, very short, as short as you can make them.
Yep.
And then let them go over them over and over. Now, we take our very small group, which we keep it small so we can say, okay, Ted, your turn, do it. And how are you going to get them back? but you can do it as individuals there. I'm talking to the mentors now, but the individual newer caller, it's a great exercise for learning how to move the dancers. And really, there's only two things that a caller does. He moves dancers and he gets them back to where he started in the story. And he inserts quality entertainment within that.
I would like to add on to this. What Daryl has said here is he's addressing the mentors here, people teaching new callers. This is a fundamental skill for new callers, learning how to move dancers around, but it's also a fundamental skill for caller mentors and teachers, because that is the biggest issue that new callers have when they find a mentor. Tom Miller, I think Daryl, you probably face this. I know Don's faced it. Betsy, I know you've definitely faced this when a new caller comes up to you and is looking for help and says, I don't understand this. I want to get from a corner box to a partner line, but I want to incorporate Dixie style. And I've created these modules, but they don't seem to flow very well. Well, it's because you've jumped the queue. You've gone so far ahead that you've only frustrated yourself. By going through this slow, simple process of development, when you get to that point of Fazar to Fazar, it's going to be so much easier because you already know what feels right to the dancers and what things do on the floor. Alan, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to make the point that the newer caller, okay, Daryl suggests goes to a two-face line and then we're going to circulate, and the destination is to get back to the facing line again. So bend the line, but that's not where they really want to stop as a new caller. They need to start to think, now, is that circulate into a bend the line the best flow I could have had to get to where I wanted to get to? Maybe if I did the couple circulate and ladies chain down the line, I achieve the same thing. I get my facing line again, but now I might have better flow. So that's the sort of steps they go through. Initially, you're getting to the two-face line, getting back to the line, but then later on you want to think, can I do that with a nicer flow? And that's how you build your flow and your continuation of the dance.
Yeah, and that's something I wanted to talk briefly about in the examples after the discussion, but that's the next step in progression, because what you see is although swing through, boys run, bend the line is a nice little sequence module. Swing through, boys run, couples circulate, bend the line, expands that to another sequence module that interacts along the floor. Swing through, boys run, couples circulate, chain down the line, achieves the same goal and has an increased flow. And what we've done here is we've now created 3 flow modules. Some work better than others, but they're all fit for purpose, fit for use. Some flow better than others. And if you want to set up a long-standing flow, you're going to develop these things. Where they're going to stick in your head from memory is how often you use them. And then people are going to relate to them. Practice and getting up and doing it is going to tell you what feels better. And once you do that and you do your analysis and you know what feels better, you're going to develop your own style of calling. What I do caution though, and Alan, you're absolutely correct, eventually you want to get to the best flow you can for the dancers, but don't rush that progression. Go through it step by step by step. Start slow and build on it. I'm going to go to Steve and then to Daryl. Steve.
Yeah, I had to unmute. As one of Daryl's new callers, we're having a lot of fun going through the formation to formation, and we're working on flows as we do it. And we get corrected. We're correcting ourselves. Oh, that doesn't work because the flow and stuff. And it's really we're learning a lot that way. It's really a great workout going from formation to formation and stuff.
Yeah, it's also a great exercise if you're working with other callers. You know, the old exercise, you do a call, I do a call, you do a call, I do a call. Working with other callers saying, right, I'm in partner lines, I'm going to call partner lines to boxes, touch a quarter, all 8 circulate, boys run. And then the next caller says, right, I'm in boxes. I'm going to go to two-phase lines, swing through, boys run, couples circulate. And the next call, and you can start building these exercises that flow and flow and flow. They're good training exercises because you can start seeing in your head where you want to go, what you want to do. But again, start small, build big. Start with exercises like, I'm in a line, I want to get to a box. What are 2 or 3 options that I can do to get there? And you will find your own development so much faster, so much greater, and your dancers will thank you for it. I got Daryl and then I got Betsy.
Just a short comment. While we're going through those things, we try to point out the fact that there's usually a very, very fast, simple way to get to the formation you want. I mean, if you're in right-hand ocean waves, what's the quickest way to get to a two-phase line?
There's lots of them.
Somebody.
Centers run.
Have either the boys or the girls do U-turn back.
Yep.
Bam, you're right there. You know, that they need to look at these movements, these combinations, and there's always a very short, simple way to do things with very simple movements. So, you know, it's just a matter of recognition. You teach yourself to know where you're going and the little tools that you can use to get from one place to another. And
that was the expansion that we said, if you've done your individual formation management for calls, you're going to see what a star through does. You're going to see what a U-turn back. You've done that call analysis. That's the step to building to these sequences. Because if I do a sequence and it may not, and I ended up in lines, but I want to do another sequence from boxes, great. I can call a star through or a slide through. I know because my individual very short transition movement will get me to where I want to be. And I can do the next sequence. I can take time to think. These are invaluable skills for every caller. And very, very well said, Daryl. I mean, there's nothing more important than knowing what you call does to a dance floor. You have to know that in order to be smooth. Betsy, you had your hand up.
Yeah. One of the early things that I would do would be to have pair 2 newer callers, have one of them just call randomly, and then the goal for the other partner would be to give them standard facing lines. And that's no matter where the other caller leaves them, standard facing lines, and then you reverse who's doing the initial calling, and the other caller has to get the standard facing lines, because so many newer callers, they may get the formation to formation, but the arrangements may be less than standard. And we all know dancers will fix things that they're not comfortable with.
Yeah. That's
So
an
if
exercise
everybody-
that you were doing at the school that you did in Wollongong.
Right.
It proved to be a very invaluable exercise for a lot of college. And it's an expansion of what Daryl was saying as well, going from, you know, if you pick a line, I want to get to a box, come up with a few things that get it, or a line, I want to get to a double pass route. It's an expansion, but it's an expansion that's definitely worth it because you have no control over the setup. You have a target goal and you start seeing these things. Absolutely invaluable exercises. Steve, Steve, you had your hand up, then Alan, and then I want to look at a couple of sequences to see what we're going here.
Along with what Daryl was saying about the simple little moves and stuff, one of the things I'm taking out of it also is that I'm seeing different ways to use simple little moves for future lessons of how to teach moves. Some of the calls you wouldn't use at a regular dance, but you could use it over and over for lessons and the little movements. And that's been a big help too.
Yeah. Well, I always love that expression. You said something there which kind of surprised me. So some of the movements that you wouldn't call at a regular dance, which I understand fully, depending on how you're using them, but the ability to see these kinds of things and do these kinds of things are going to, by Masako, are going to really enhance your ability as a caller, and they're really going to enhance your ability as a dancer to enjoy that experience. But don't be hesitant to use good sequence flow modules at an open dance. But that comes into the session we had on judgment. Sometimes there are calls or combinations that you may want to use with just a little bit of hesitation. So it's a good comment. Alan, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was just carrying on from Daryl's comment about the simple calls. The newer caller is actually learning a lot of the techniques that are going to help him when he gets into trouble. Understanding the simplest thing he can do to maybe try and get himself, and maybe it's just face the person beside you and star through, or face the lady beside you and star through. And as Daryl said, do a U-turn back. It might be do a right and left through and just turn the girl a quarter more. Those little techniques that they learn while they're trying to do formation navigation are the things that when they get themselves in some sort of serious area where they've got themselves in a fantastic formation, somewhere that they don't quite understand and they don't know their way out of it, then these little tools are the things that are going to help them to get out of that situation. So it's the building process that they're having, their learning process that they're having along the way.
And that's what we touched on in the last session as well. You know, there's 79 named formations in the Collar Lab formation manual. There's probably, I would estimate, not more than 600 million possible formations if you want to look at every dancer. To me, even trying to understand 79 is a ridiculous waste of energy, because beyond your basic 14, everything else is generally a transition formation to move from one place. You know, I'm going to go through this, or a formation that is used solely for the purpose of one caller speaking to another caller to explain where the dancers are on the floor. From a dancer point of view, these are the 14 comfortable places that they are. And the two most important are a standard couple and facing couples. Most things flow from there. And what Alan just said is absolutely correct. The basic skills of looking at, something's not quite right, understanding a simple movement and understanding what a movement does. A good example, double pass through cloverleaf, or swing through boys run, tag the line, cloverleaf. Oh my God, I've got somebody out. Double pass through leads, U-turn back. Knowing that a U-turn back will fix that half sashayed couple to a normal couple. Turning one dancer back. Don't look for hard and complex. Simple is there. Once you've got simple, then you can build on it. I want to look at a couple of things here. So I'm just going to share my screen again. So if you remember what I said, when you start, you want to start small. So ideally, you start with 2 couple sequences. So you want to, you might want pass through, partner trade, reverse flutter wheel. Okay, so I've done the analysis on each of those calls individually. I know what hand I have to have free at the start, what hand I have to free. So if this was, for instance, my sequence that I know flows, I would do exactly the same thing. And I would say, right, I start with this call. I've got both hands free. I'm in facing lines, or I'm in facing couples. Pass through, I'm in couples back to back. Partner trade, great. I've got the boy with his left hand free, the right hand free. I've got the boy moving in left. I've done my call analysis. Reverse flutter wheel, great. Boys are leading in. I've got the girls with the right hand free, and I end up, this is keeping the formation. I've now looked at my sequence. I take this sequence and I say, right, let's treat this sequence as an individual movement for call analysis. And what I've got is, I've got a facing couple. I end in a facing couple. I've kept the formation because I haven't changed the aspect or anything along that line. And what's free at the end of it? Okay, I've got the girl with the right hand free and my body flow is to the left. Or, sorry, my body flow is to the right, I should say. So that analysis for a sequence is exactly the same. I can do exactly the same if I use the sequence from facing couples for instance, past the ocean, centers trade, recycle, recycle. Why is that not working? Doesn't like recycle. And my contamination's just crapped out on me. Give me a second. Let's set it up. Okay, so just look at these two couples on the left side of the screen. Okay, so we're still doing two couple stuff. So if I did pass the ocean, centers trade or girls trade, recycle, okay, slide through. Okay, I know I've got a keep formation sequence. It's a two couple sequence. It hasn't done anything as far as other than move the dancers. But I also noticed that if I was moving partway through that, oh, I've now got a change sequence. Pass the ocean, centers trade, recycle changes me from facing lines, or sorry, from a two couple formation north-south to a two couple formation east-west. By expanding that, it also changes, all right, from facing lines, a two couple change changes a four couple formation. So I've got facing lines, standard facing lines, the same sequence changes the facing lines. Now I've got a flow module for four couples. And you can do all these things with two couples development. You just have to worry about your flow, your crowding, all those other kinds of things. Once you've got a bunch of those, then you can expand them into four couple modules. So if you know, and there's so many different change sequences that you could develop. For instance, pass through. Let's do a girls run. We're going to change the direction. Hinge. Chain down the line. That's a keep. And by adding an individual movement like star through at the beginning or end of it, star through or slide through, I've now got a change module that works two couples. I can use that. That feels like four couple dancing, even though it's a two couple module. It changes the four couple formation because it's a change. From here, I can do all sorts of things. If I wanted to change this, for instance, to a flow sequence to, well, Daryl said it before, two face lines. Let's look at the one he gave us. Swing through. Well, you will use boys run because we're talking about that. Boys run. Couples circulate. There's a nice little combination. If I want to, there's a flow sequence right there. Swing through, boys run, couples circulate. We can do the same thing. Let's just take that back to our box and add on to that sequence like Alan said. Swing through, boys run, couples circulate, chain down the line. I now have the same combination of flow, but I've got a sequence that takes me from a box to facing lines. I've got a sequence that takes me from a box to two face lines, and I haven't done too many changes to it. And this is the beauty of understanding this kind of stuff, because you can repeat the sequences very, very easily by the addition or subtraction of one movement within that sequence. I'm trying to think of a good example here. Okay. Come on. Okay. Let's use. Something's going on here. Is Taminations, I'm getting a error. Is my Taminations moving on your screen?
No,
Not right now.
No.
Okay,
Don't
let's
forget
try
the
this.
cursor.
No, I was doing that. It's not typing.
You have too many
Okay.
things open, maybe?
No. Okay. Let's undo this. Okay, so I'm in a box as an example. So if okay, so if I do,
can I give you an example, Well?
yeah, just 1 second here. Swing through. There we go. Swing through girls. Circulate. Boys trade. Spin the top. Recycle. Okay, so we've got a sequence that has taken me from a box, or sorry, from a box to facing lines. Once you have a sequence that works, and this is expanding the idea, and if you remember what both Daryl and Alan said, there's very, very fast transitions from one formation to another formation that you can fit in anywhere. So if I wanted to change this, pass through, bend the line, I've now changed the formation from facing lines to facing line. I'm sorry, I've now changed it from facing lines to facing lines, but on a different aspect. I feel like I'm moving around the floor. I'm looking at different people. I can use that same sequence with a movement like star through or slide through. And then I can repeat that sequence, swing through, girls circulate, boys trade, spin the top, recycle. And I've done that with a whole bunch of different things with different people moving around the floor. And when they're actually moving, for them, it feels comfortable. There's flow, there's concurrent activity, there's going around, they're moving around the floor in all sorts of different directions. And as you can see, there's very little repeated circle movements in the dancers. They're using entire quadrants of the floor moving around effectively. This is how you start developing your flow modules. This is how you start developing all of these sequences and things that will go to giving your dancers a really good, smooth transition from flow to flow, from formation to formation. And you can build up your repertoire into something that the dancers are going to really, really enjoy dancing to. Eventually, what you'll see is there's a few of these sequences that you tend to gravitate towards, develop. As Alan was saying, swing through, boys run, couple circulate, chain down the line. Nice little sequence. He may use that 4 or 5 times. That has now become a flow module because it's something that's in his head. It's something that he remembers what it does. It's taking me from this formation to this formation. I can repeat it as a sequence with good, comfortable flow for the dancers. And I've got time to look at the dancers, see what there is, and what I want to do with the next. And if I want to repeat it, I add something like a star through. That's collar development. That's flow development. And it's the next step beyond individual movement formation. And it'll take a long time to get past individual movement formation management to sequence management, but it's well worth the journey. Take your time at the beginning. The rest of it will come easier. Daryl, you got your hand up, and I think there was a couple of things in the chat here. Where are we?
Yeah, absolutely. What you did was correct. Too long for a brand new caller.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I realize that.
You're preaching to the choir for the rest of us, but
yeah.
But yeah, from 8 chain through to a line, what do you do? Slide through, you got a line, right?
Yep. Yeah, this is the next step.
Back to an 8 chain through, here's another slide through. Yeah, well, there's a lot of things you can do with all of this stuff. I guess what I'm trying to say is keep it simple, keep it short and a kiss, right?
Yep.
Short and simple for the new people, because if you're going to expect them to start,
Daryl, I need to qualify here. When we talked about formation management with individual movements, absolutely. When we talked about formation management to basic sequencing, that's why we said 2 movements, 3 movements, 4 movements. You want to keep it short, never more than 5, because 5 is about the maximum you could have in a sequence. But if you can do it with 4, it's even better as a maximum. But it's a long time progression, and you progress through those steps individually. This is one session that talks about progression, the next step, but it's for new callers this is where you're going to get through if you go through those steps. And for mentors, it's take a step back and make sure that your new dancers go through these steps one at a time. 1 movement, 2 movement, 3 movement, 4 movement. Keep it short and simple before you progress. Start small and build from there. And an absolutely valued point. I also want to point out one thing. Daryl, I believe you've been posting on the newbie callers or callers in training?
Newbie callers mainly.
Newbie callers.
I'll drop something into callers in training if I think it might be something they might be interested in.
There are some excellent exercises of diagonal opposites, formation management. You did a recent one on goal posting, moving the dancers around the goalpost.
Have a new one on that I just put out today. There again, it's a step-by-step process when I do these things. I don't want to throw everything out there at once, but
absolutely. If you are a new caller, or even if you're an experienced caller, I strongly recommend, if you're on Facebook, have a look at that page or earmark that page, because there's a lot of really good questions from new callers and from experienced callers like Daryl that put things up there, which are great exercises that open your eyes, and especially for experienced callers, refresh you into, you know what, I haven't thought about that in a while. I better think about that.
be a mentor. Be a mentor. We're going to need so many new callers, gang. We're going to need a lot of them if we're going to rebuild this activity after the pandemic, if it ever ends. But there again, just like the activity totally has become very detailed and very complex. Learn simple ways to teach these new people how to call. If you can get them interested, keep them interested, keep it simple.
And I would like to add on very much so that if we get back to these basic foundation skills, the Rush to Plus, the SSD program, we've got to get this done in a year, is all going to disappear, mainly because your dancers are going to be having a good time on the floor dancing to what you're calling, and they're not going to be so worried about, oh, you know, all my friends are dancing plus or advanced. The reason is all your friends dancing advanced and challenge right now, in 10 years, please excuse me for saying it this way, but in 10 years are probably going to be dead or too old to dance. And you want to get people in to the activity that are going to enjoy the activity, regardless of whether you do basic or you do SSD or you do basic and mainstream combined. You can use these techniques to build happy, comfortable, social dancers that are enjoying the activity, and they will stick around a lot longer than in Rush to Plus. Great, I've done this. Okay, I can tick that box, but it's too complex. I'm moving on to another activity, like you know, thermodynamics or advanced calculus, because it's so much easier than square dancing. So that's a little jibe as to where we're going. I appreciate that. That's a personal opinion, but we do have to simplify it and bring the dance and the fun back into square dancing if we want this activity to survive. For everybody else, I do want to make an apology. I sent an email out that said the 10th. I was quickly told that it's the 11th. I sent it out that it's the 11th, but I was quickly told Sunday's the 12th. And it wouldn't let me send out an email saying it's the 12th because I got a notification because I sent 2 corrections to mass addresses that I was spamming. So I couldn't send the final correction. So I do apologize for the mix up on dates, but it was corrected on Facebook and the other web pages that we posted this. So if I did add any confusion, I do apologize to any of those that has happened. Rod. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah. People who work make mistakes. People who don't work don't make mistakes. So don't worry.
You're too diplomatically kind. Roz, have you found these things that these types of activities have been helping you in your development?
Yes, definitely. And look, I've never really known the difference of what a flow module is to a module, apart from thinking it's body flow. So it's basically a short sequence going from one position to another. We've got good body flow. So from what I gather from this, you can learn something short to go from lines to 2-face lines, and then look at an equivalent of getting there with good body flow.
Yeah, I do want to clarify and specify the way I defined modules is slightly different, but I do that just from my mind. It helps me keep them separate. If we look at the pure technical definition of a module, it's any single movement or any combination of movements that I'm calling for a purpose, and I can repeat that purpose. So taking me from a line to a box, or taking me from a corner box to a partner line, whatever it is, if I can repeat that, that becomes a module. I separate an individual movement. I don't call individual movement modules because I know what the movement does and I know what its purpose is. And I'm going to repeat every individual movement, even though each movement is a module in itself if I do it for a purpose. I don't call transitions without sorting, without phasar, I don't call them fixed modules, fixed point modules. I don't call a sequence that flows a module until I'm able to repeat it. And I separate a flow module from a formation module. I separate those to a flow module. I don't worry about formation. For sequencing modules, that's the phasar. That says corner box to partner line. That's just how I separate them. But a module is technically anything that is done with a purpose to achieve a goal that is repeatable. That's a module. And that's why I specified it in there. How you want to define it and how it works for you is the way you have to define modules. I separate them this way because it's easier for me. Mickey, you had a comment?
Yeah, anyway, a module which takes you from one known phaser to another phaser should be a flowing module anyway.
It should be. Not always are. And that's also something I noted. I saw a couple of eyebrows raised when I said the defining smooth dancing. The thing I really loved about that definition, and although it was applicable to ballroom dancing or American smooth ballroom dancing, which is a class definition, which I was surprised to find out, said without unintentional jerks or changes of direction. And that caught my eye specifically because without unintentional, and if you want to look it up, it goes through that and it says these changes of direction and whatnot are intentional. They're part of the dance, but the way they happen is because there is hand contact to make that direction. And a classic example is the combination of touch a quarter, walk and dodge, partner trade. That is an intentional change of direction that can be smooth, but it requires, as per the definition of ballroom dancing, that contact and that partner relationship to be established to make it smooth. If you don't do that, it's not smooth because you've got no reference. And I love that without unintentional, which to me says as a caller, your job is to deliver smooth. And that means if there's going to be a direction change or a intentional stop flow of action to change direction, you better have attended, you had better have intended to do that. Don't make it just bad choreography. And Mickey is absolutely right. Your phasar modules should all be smooth. Any questions, comments, queries, points?
The last sequence we had on the termination, is that still there?
Yep.
Could we share that again and put colors
Yeah.
on the and numbers on the dancers?
I can. Just a second. Is the screen being shared?
Nope. Yes, that's coming.
Okay. So if I put colors, dance colors by couple. Let's go, where's the wrong numbers? And just remember, if you look at this, there's multiple sequences here. Head square through, that takes me from a static square to a box.
Yeah, could we just start from the beginning?
Yeah, I'm just explaining. This is not one
Okay.
flow module. This is a sequence of modules that are strung together. And that's like the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle. That's why I used the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah, we just start from the top and have them. As I said, from the square, we went to a corner box, right?
Well, we went to a box, but yes, we are in a corner box. I wasn't
Okay.
looking at Fabzar. Yeah.
Okay, and now we had that module
Swing through.
with the girls circulating and the boys trade, which is pretty much an AC-doozy type stuff. Just go back to the before we start to spin the top. Okay, now everybody has partner again.
Yep.
So if you see that, okay, that means that we got one person over, and from the corner we went to a partner pairing. Let's say it this way. Okay, now keep going. Here comes the spin the top, and we still keep that pairing.
Yep.
Recycle. Now we're out of sequence, but we keep that pairing. We have to pass through. We still have partners, bend the line. We have other people's facing, but still have partners. Now you said, let's do the whole thing over again, slide through. We need to do that. And here comes the same flow module we had with the swing through and the girls circulate. And boys trade. And the spin the top and the recycle. And we missed one person and we went back to a corner pairing. So this is funny to see if you can see that. If you do it twice again, then you just can reshape everything, go forward and back, and have something really nice to play with. So sometimes you get modules where you just bring one person over, and that is easily hidden in that kind of a flow module, controlling the square. And you could play forever with that without ever seeing anyone knowing what you're doing, and you're hiding your secrets, right? Yeah. But you got to see it. Yeah. And I think it's a cool example.
Well, it is, and I figured we were going to get into something like that, but I didn't want to, like, if I look at it this way, sorry, I'm not worried about who's with who. I'm not worried about Fabzar, because for a new caller, to say, right, okay, so we're in a partner pairing, but this movement also maintains a partner pairing, but changes the aspect, but it gives me a different phasor state, which is this in a partner phasor state. And when I expand it to the bend the line, I've got a same partner pairing, but I've also changed the sequence, and I've got this. And that becomes very complicated because I know for a fact that many new callers don't look at a sequence as far as don't look at a flow sequence as opposed to at the same time as they look at the dancer relationship sequence, because they haven't developed that skill as yet. If like Mickey is saying, I look at this now, there it is. I've got a static square to a box to a line to a line, and I know from here I could do a star through and I'd be back to a box.
I mean,
but
we had them all.
Hang on, Mickey. But the other aspect that Mickey is talking about is something that definitely comes in relationships, because once you've developed the skill of managing the formation, and now we're starting to look into the partner pairing relationships and sequencing, I know that, look at this, everybody's in sequence. I don't have my partner pairings, but I've got them set up in the center. I've got a corner pairing. So what have I got here? I could do a square through 3. Oh, where am I here? I'm ready for an Alaman left. So that takes me from my formation management to my phasor management, leading to resolution. And it is an excellent skill, but developing this aspect first makes the aspect that Mickey is talking about able to come quicker and easier to understand because you're not worried about what each movement does, because you already know what each movement does. And you'll find that when you develop flow sequences, exactly as Mickey says, I can look at this and say, from here, I've gone from a corner box to a partner line out of sequence. I've gone from a partner line out of sequence to
into a corner line.
And I can start managing my phasors leading to resolution. And we know a corner line out of sequence, I may have 6 or 8 different resolutions for a corner line resolution. A corner line.
This would be the next step. You see, I saw them all in black, and I went in my mind, I checked the routine, and I thought that'd be interesting because on one way, of course, it's the next step. But if you have a nice flowing routine you worked with, okay, and then you take a look at what happens with the dancers, I think the earlier you train that and to see what's happening, the better you will get a view to it, to later on when you're trained and more experienced to see it on the fly. Okay, but
yeah,
I've got Jerry Story said that we
that.
need to train that the callers more to take a look at sequence as well as relationship. And I agree. But Jerry also said, and that's in the development of crams, because that is a corner resolution and manipulation system, and it's defined. It's done specifically to manage phasors to lead to a resolution that you're moving the dancers around. It is something that does need a lot more work on, but it's something that needs the work once you know how to actually move the dancers. And as Jerry said, none of these systems, whether it's mental image, whether it's modular, whether it's sight calling, whether it's standard resolution or crams or any of the other systems, works unless you first know how to move the dancers and know what a movement does to a formation. And until you know that, don't worry about what the sequences are, because that will come much easier in time, because now you're going to start. And he has, when he was doing his training, what he had was, if he could, he'd get all matching color pennies and just have them move around, or take no pennies and have them move around. And then when he started teaching crams, he'd put a color on couple number 1 and couple number 4 only, matching colors, and move them around, because the mirror aspect. And that was the development of corner
corner resolution.
sequence and
Yeah.
relationship.
And it's sequencing or relation, depending on which method you use, relationship is more important than sequence, or sequence is more important than relationship. Whatever method you use, even if it's mental image, what works for you is best. But on all of them, understanding what the movements do and what sequences do, if you're using flow sequences, is the foundation of developing your choice system for resolution.
One more thing I'd like to add. Especially for beginner callers, I would not put so much the emphasis on the phaser when working this. It's just more or less seeing what happens with the dancers. I don't really care what phaser they're in right now. All I see is that they're having their corner or their partner, or that they had partners and now we lost someone. I wouldn't really care about the phaser, because that is, I would say, too sophisticated when calling, when being in the battle. I don't care about, those teaching type, scientific type things. Okay, we need something usual where you can really see it on the spot and have something to grab and to hold on, which just works as fast as possible.